A good mood.
I put on a
Sitting
shirt.
is the new smoking, Rob.
Here we
Sitting
go.
is the new smoke. Welcome, everybody. It's the usual suspects, Jacob, there we go, Zach, and Rob. And we're here to discuss the shadow pipeline. I love the subtext, what's lurking outside your CRM. Businesses have hidden revenue stuck in spreadsheets, Slack threads, side conversations, just shadow pipeline. And this means you miss forecasts, you will allocate resources in the wrong direction, you will lose deals that nobody's tracking. And so today we're here to talk about identifying, capturing, and systematizing shadow opportunities so they stop slipping through the cracks. I've got a few stories about this already. I think some of the stuff we'll cover is where shadow pipelines hide, why representatives avoid logging opportunities, how to centralize data with zero resistance, and automating reporting, because there are ways of doing it. And yeah, we just want to bring shadow deals to the surface in today's conversation. So who wants to start tackling this mess?
I think you said why. What really got me going, Jacob? Why do people not put the dang data in the CRM? Why? So every salesperson I've ever talked to says, I want to be out there generating revenue, right? Stop giving me admin work to do, right? I know who my customers are. I know what my deals in play are. I know what my pipeline looks like. Why do you want me to, quote unquote, waste my time keying it into Salesforce? Right? Consistent argument.
So do you respond with the sales happen 8 to 20 points of contact, or the 5th to 13th follow-up? Like those are the two stats I use whenever I experience that resistance or friction.
I don't think that the resistance or friction is coming from laziness per se. I think a lot of times it's that people, they sales teams keep things hidden in their pipeline. They don't put them into the CRM because they don't want to be held accountable for them yet.
Right.
Ooh.
Right. It's a way to whip your stats, right?
So they don't
ones that I know I'm going to win. What does my win rate look like?
And that's the real problem, right? So to me, it's a leadership problem. It's a incentivization problem. It's not necessarily these guys are lazy, because and Rob, I'm curious on your take on this, and you too, Jacob. My gut reaction is often these guys are just lazy. They don't want to do it with a lot of things, right? Like I've got 4 kids, 10 and under. And my typical reaction when my kids whine about sweeping the floor in the kitchen every night after dinner is, you're just being lazy. But then as I think about it, I'm like, well, I don't know if it is that they're being lazy. There's probably something else going on. And I think that as leaders, when we say it's just laziness, I think we do them a disservice.
Yeah, when we coach these kinds of things, and I'm referring specifically to the grow model of coaching here, we typically talk about interference. And that's what you're talking about, Zach. Like, what is the other thing going on inside the person that gets in the way of them exhibiting the specific behavior or accomplishing the task that you need them to do? And the subtlety in that communication, what you need them to do, is part of the problem. Because flipping it over and holding the accountability on them and making it something that they need to do, right? Compelled, remove their interference. What is their barrier? Why they perceive it to be low value rather than high value? Why they think of it as a waste of time, right?
Or why are they afraid to log it?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the thing that I'm wondering. Like, as a leader, as a manager of a sales team, why is your sales team afraid to truly reflect their numbers? Is there a certain sense of uncertainty, instability when it comes to their job, so that if I really have 10 leads in my pipeline, but I'm only logging 5 because I am more confident that those 5 are going to close. So that way, instead of a 40% close rate, I have an 80% close rate.
Well, this goes back to balanced scorecard design, right? Aligning the incentives with, do we know the right behaviors, right? Are we going to measure the behaviors? Yes. Do we know within one standard deviation what the close rate should be? Yes. Right? If not, can we ask why 5 times and go backwards and data mine that? Sure, we can. Right? So let's make sure we're not just measuring the number of new accounts created, because we're a bank and we want to have more new accounts created, right? Over incentivizing any one metric at the expense of all the others in an unbalanced way produces unbalanced behavior, right?
What about gamification? How does that come in? And where, if we wanted to deploy that, if we wanted to make it something interesting / fun, a goal that everyone's reaching towards, where would you start to get that involved?
So I'm curious if you can expand a little bit more on that, because to me it seems like sales is the ultimate gamified sort of position, right? If I'm playing video games, I'm getting rewarded by points. If I'm in sales, I'm getting rewarded by dollars on my paycheck. So I'm curious what you mean by that.
Well, for example, like you look at the difference between, well, let's call it amateur and professional sports, right? And like in the amateur space, everybody's excited because they went out there, they showed up, they tried, and winning honestly is quite secondary to the participatory nature of it, right? But that's normal human beings, not elites.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that may be something to explore, because I'm a big believer in performance culture, like having an environment where certain things are set. I had a great meeting with a company I'm doing some work with earlier today, and I mentioned that to the guy because I met with 3 different department heads, and it's just like, you guys are just so clear every single time, right? It's clear that like, let's deal with the matter at hand and be to the point about it. And I felt like during those calls, there was no wasted time, which kind of fits, the work that I'm there to do with them and personality types. But if I'm coming in to consult and criticize, what a great space to be like, listen, this is why this isn't working, right? And they're here to hear that. And so again, that's even a different form of gamification, because when I complimented the guy I met with today, meeting 3, he was like, yeah, it's who we are. We all have these backgrounds and we're here to get the ball in the net and not worry about, did you say pass nicely or not? Yeah.
So to me, it sounds like what you're talking about is just a certain level of professionalism and team unity, right? It's like, is everybody on the same page, or is everybody ego driven? Because if someone's ego driven, they are going to care. Did you say pass nicely, or did you yell, pass me the damn ball? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, they're going to care. But on those elite teams, they're like, no, we're not going to take it personally. We're all performing at our highest levels here. And so to me, I think it's a question of, as a leader, how well am I doing in providing that team unity and giving the team a space where they feel like they can share those leads that they might not close, so that like I'm getting an accurate reflection of what my pipeline actually is.
Got it.
You might be able to do some kind of balanced scorecard and have a total point system with weighting depending on your particular circumstance, right? We may have designed things like this for sales and support people at companies I've worked for, where even though the jobs might differ, territories might differ, product lines might differ, if you go through the exercise of all the proper weighting, you can have a clear gamified points-based system, albeit the spreadsheet looks a bit like a 747. You can do it. You can do it. It's just a math problem. That's all it is.
Yeah, and I guess that's maybe the thing I was asking about, because if you're there to play the game, it doesn't matter what the game is, right? It's like county fair type stuff. Like, you're just happy to be there. It doesn't matter if you just went over to the throwing darts or over there to the ring toss. It's just like, I got to play. And so that's my question from a cultural perspective, I guess, is how would you bring that stuff into play inside of an organization so that everybody's there to experience the joy of the thing and worrying less about, was I at 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, or 6 out of 10 today in my conversions?
I think the biggest struggle, or the answer in that, Jacob, is you said today. So if there's a problem if you're going to start measuring with such minutia. Like, yes, behaviors should be consistent day to day, but looked at that scale, the volatility day to day could be astronomical. If you're hinging yourself emotionally, or indeed if you're managing accountability with that kind of micromanaging lens, right? What are you doing, right? You're going to stress your people out. So if on average for a week you need to have this many and you treat people like an adult, who's to say they don't take their daughter to the dentist on Tuesday afternoon and then double down on the set of initial pipeline behaviors on Wednesday morning, right? Like, you got to give people some space while you manage the expectation at a more macro level.
Got it.
Yeah. Let's by the day. Ooh, no, thank you. Unless I choose that for myself, to hold myself accountable for today, right? That's a different story.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know, Zach. You're more sales genius than I am.
Oh, why? Thank you.
Tell me where I'm wrong. What am I missing, man?
I think that sales teams are a lot more emotional than we think they are.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a product team, the product is very, very clear. We have a set goal. Sales teams are typically populated by people who want to be the best because they want to be the best. That's why they want to be the best. And so it's a very ego-driven team. There can be a lot of politics going on. They're also very friendly with each other. If you have a good sales team where people are allowed to succeed or fail on their own and not necessarily held in competition with each other, but held in competition with themselves. But I think that if there were one thing that I could start doing today to set a foundation for getting into the stuff that Rob was talking about with a balanced scorecard, I think it would be, as a leader, to focus less on like stern correction and more on coaching. Because as a sales leader, I want my sales team to feel like, if I tell them, hey, your fly's down, you've got a booger hanging out of your nose, that they're not going to lose their job. I don't want them to I don't want that to get in their head and cause them to go into a tailspin, blah, blah, blah. But I do want them to zip up their fly and take the booger out from their nose. Mm-hmm. And I need them to know that I'm going to coach them through to be the best salesperson in this context that they can possibly be. And I think that is the first thing that I would do, is check my own attitude and say, how am I showing up for my team? Am I showing up as a coach, or am I showing up as an a-hole?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you start to get that handled, but as we're all aware, the coaches aren't on the field. So how do you get that stuff transferred from the bench to the players?
Carrot and stick. And I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. It's carrot and stick. And there are plenty of research papers that show that the carrot works better than the stick. But at the end of the day, this is going to sound harsh, but there is a fundamental reason why society doesn't crumble around us, and it's because of the stick. So the stick keeps, in my opinion, the stick keeps sort of the base norms in place, and the carrot is what helps people elevate to that next level. But unless they have that intrinsic, motivation, you have to have that stick in place, or else everything will fall apart. That's how I see it. So, you've got to have the consequences for not doing your 20 calls a day. You've got to have the consequences for, you didn't fill this out in the CRM, and then Steve called and he looked like a complete idiot because he had no clue what was going on. And it cost us the sale, and the sale was $20,000, right? Like, those are the kinds of things that you need to have a stick in place. And then the carrot is, hey, you know what, Rob? I noticed that you've been doing 25 calls a day instead of the base 20. I really appreciate you doing that. I want to recognize you in front of the team for doing that. And here's a $20 gift card, or here's a $100 gift card, just because I can tell you are going above and beyond. You're really dedicated to your job. And I want to give you a reward for that. I want you to know that you're valued here and that you are a role model for the rest of the team.
Incentivize the excellence and enforce the minimum acceptable standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you define those minimal acceptable standards?
Great question. That's where the quantitative work comes in.
Yep.
Because that in a sales context, you can typically show a correlation between the number of outbound outreach that you're doing filtered through your pipeline to the output that you want. If I'm making 20 calls a day, I'm typically going to have this many number of conversations a week, which translates to this many prospects, which translates to this many closes, which means this much dollars in our bank account, which means that we get this much at the end of the year. So you bring in that quantitative side, and you sort of walk back your this is our goal. So this is how, if I want to get this much, I have to make this much per month. I have to make this much per week. If I want to make this much per week, I need to be closing this many people. If I want to be closing this many people, I need to have this many calls, because this is our conversion rate. If I want to have this many calls, then this is how they convert through the pipeline, right? So you have to know at each stage of the pipeline, what is my conversion rate and where am I stalling out? Because that's where I now, as a sales leader, that's where I should be focusing my time, which is diagnosing why is it failing out at this spot in the pipeline and not at another spot in the pipeline, and how can I sort of smooth it out so that we have more people moving more smoothly through the funnel.
Right. And the oversimplified answers, in my experience, are handoffs and lack of systems. Right. Those are the two main failure points that I see anyway. But I guess one of the things I'd say is those fixes aren't possible, in my opinion, without a clearly defined customer journey. And I have met people in situations who are trying to put a tool in there without knowing, is it a nail? Is it a screw? Like what do you need to apply to this first? Right? They just know they want two boards stuck together, but it isn't like to what end.
Right.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I think that the customer journey is one of those often misunderstood aspects of businesses. And well, I'll give you an example. I was talking with a company just the other day, and it was like, okay, tell me your lifetime value, tell me your cost to acquire, tell me your monthly project revenue, tell me how your conversion rate, and they tell me, oh yeah, our conversion rate is under 10%. And I say, okay, but your monthly project value $150, and your lifetime value is equivalent to 6 months of $150. So there's a disconnect here, and we've got to figure this out, because your churn rate is actually much higher than less than 10%. Your time horizon must be like a week. So, I well, and to be quite honest, they don't understand their customer journey at all. Mm-hmm. They might understand maybe where they start, but they don't understand where they end, and the desired outcome. And I had to call them out on it. And I discover this a lot with companies that have really, really good marketers as the CMO or as the CEO, right? It's someone who's a really good marketer. They can bring leads through the door, right? But they're marketing qualified leads. They're not sales qualified leads. And so because of that, they don't understand the customer journey. They don't understand. And so sales has to do whatever it takes to close those deals. Well, when sales does whatever it takes to close the deals, you get garbage in, garbage out. And so those customers, they get a first experience with this job, with this product or tool, and they say, this isn't doing exactly what I thought it would do. And in this instance, the users were willing to put up with it for about 6 months, and then they rioted, and the decider said, okay, we're done. Close it up. We'll find something else. And so, understanding that buyer's journey and where they want to end up is critical.
Absolutely. So in my opinion, like field anyway, understanding that allows you to then kind of create a north. Right? Then everybody in the team can be like, hey, whether you're responsible for leads, conversion, sales, right? Because we're pre-transaction most of this conversation today. At least everybody's pointing in the same direction. And then you can start contextualizing the labor of moving the prospect through the pipeline as a qualification process instead of as a conveyor belt. Right. And that's one of the things that I find I come up against sometimes is people get kind of addicted to those numbers or those metrics, because it's just like, oh my God, if we push down harder on the front, we can just ram more of them through.
Yeah.
And that's where you get that scenario you're describing.
Holla.
If the lead gen is talented, if they've got a good team up front.
No, that's exactly what happens, and they do look at it as a conveyor belt. But the more sophisticated the product that you're selling, the higher the price tag the product that you're selling, particularly in B2B contexts, like the less like a conveyor belt you have to look at your sales. Mm-hmm. You have to look at every single person that I'm bringing in this door could be a gold nugget, and it's my job to scrub the dirt off, get enough water on there, make sure, is this gold or is this iron pyrite? Do I have the magnet there to test? Is this iron pyrite? Okay, no, this could be a gold nugget. All right, let's take it to the lab. Let's melt it down. Let's do some samples, right? Like, but unless I'm taking the time to qualify that lead, I'm going to get a lot more fool's gold in my pipeline.
Yeah.
And that's where this disconnect doesn't happen for a lot of organizations, is that they really don't understand the difference between an MQL, marketing qualified lead, which is anyone who raises their hand and says, yeah, sure, I'll learn more, and a sales qualified lead, which is someone who says, I have a budget, I have a timeline, I am the decision maker, and I recognize that I have a problem that I need to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah, very well said. Absolutely. I default to surgery a lot as an analogy for the
That
exact
makes
same
sense.
reason. Because by the time you get in there, you've gone past your GP to like one or two experts. They've done some sort of scope or scan or assessment, right? And all these things have to happen before you end up wheeled in there with a giant Jiffy marker mark on the right limb. Because that's another thing I find in these fractured sales processes that you're talking about, is like they're over here trying to fix the left side. It's like, but it's the right that's broken.
And they didn't even stop to look. My dad, when he was 17, developed thyroid cancer as a result of the nuclear testing in Nevada. And when they went to do the surgery, the orderly came in and shaved half his head. And my grandma was in the room with him, and she was like, "What are you doing? Why are you shaving his head?" And they're like, "Well, it says on the chart." Oh, oops. So like it happens all the time, and it happens in sales too, right? And it's because we forget that the little things make all the difference in the world, especially in sales. Especially in sales.
Nobody wants accidental brain surgery. Nobody.
Very true.
Nobody.
Very true.
Wow. Yeah, that's remarkable. So you know where true north is. Everybody's got a compass and they can start navigating towards it. They've got their steps. How about the cultural phenomenon? How do you get these people all playing to get the ball in the net instead of a more individualized thing of how many points can I score?
Well, there's much debate about it. I'm a big fan of shared incentive and group wins, right? And there's any number of philosophies and detail you could put on this, but I have a friend who works in sales, and if an external rep sells something in your territory and you'll be on the hook for supporting it, the commission gets 50-50. If you sell something in someone else's territory and they'll be on the hook for supporting it, the commission gets split 50-50. Now you can argue, depending on the product line, the nature of the support, et cetera, whether or not 50-50 is the right distribution. But that kind of somehow figuring out how to share the incentives among the team, right? Individual incentives, team incentives. I would even argue company incentives, right? To get every person on the boat rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
Right? Being thoughtful, diligent, fair about doing those kinds of total compensation process designs, system designs, can produce a lot of that alignment you're talking about, Jacob.
So that's part of my question, right? Because I've been having meetings with these leaders within this organization, but really it's under 50. What would you say about maintaining that stuff as you start going from that 50 to 100? Are there any pitfalls, things to avoid, or best practices so that you can scale leadership and teamwork?
Which 50 are you talking about? The 50-50 distribution, pushing that more in the direction?
Just below 50 team members. Like it's a smaller company. Right. So that, like, to the point, this is how we do it, communication. It seems to really work, but it's not that hard when everyone in the room can hear you.
Yeah, it is easier to change manage. It is easier to communicate. It's easier to do everything when the team is smaller. As it gets bigger, all of that becomes more complicated, more difficult. Absolutely. And then as we start scaling up and building the sales organization, that then creates the need for proper mentoring, proper onboarding of everyone in a sales leadership capacity. that they all understand the principles. You're not just walking around with a giant stick threatening to fire everybody, because that turns them into kind of the same kind of leader, right?
Right.
All accountability, no carrots,
Tyrannosaurus management.
Right. And then you end up with 80% annualized turnover, and you're scratching your head why we're leaving $51 million off the bottom line because it's walking out the door, right? I mean,
Well, I agree with everything Rob has said, but I am going to emphasize shared incentive.
yeah.
I think that well, let's put it this way. If it weren't within the shared incentive in World War II for the UK, the US, and the Soviet Union to align, there's no way the US and the UK would have aligned with the Soviet Union. There's no way, right? There were shared incentives. So where incentives are shared, we have a team. I guess, put another way, teamwork, defining ourselves as a team has more to do with shared incentive and less to do with the color of jersey we have on. And I think that in a sales context, one thing that I've seen a team do that I personally have really liked is they don't pay out commissions. They pay out bonuses. And the bonuses are kind of like a commission in that for every closed deal, they get a percentage of that. But let's say that I come in and I help you, Rob, close the deal. Well, then I get a commission on that every bit as much as you do. And so it's sort of this, it helps to align my incentive and your incentive to closing the deal and not toward who closed the deal. It's we're moving towards our goal no matter what. And I actually think that is a really great way of doing it. So looking at incentive is the key to creating teamwork, not the jersey color. And yeah, you can do things like team trips. You can do things like regular team meetings where you don't really talk about sales or pipeline or anything like that. But at the end of the day, all of that stuff is just kind of icing on the cake, and it's really just as long as our incentives align, then we can be friends.
Got it.
Are they ever really all friends?
I mean,
colleagues?
Any movie I've ever seen says you have to have the one person they all pick on.
But let me put it this way. If I'm a good manager, then I make sure that I know that I'm the one person that they all pick on, because I'm the one person who can say, stop it. And that's important. I don't want them picking on someone else on the team, because, that is not going to be beneficial to their unity. But if they can jokingly say, hey, yeah, Zach's so weird and blah, 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 like whatever they want to say about me, that's fine, because at the end of the day, they know who's writing the check. And so they can only push it so far.
Got it. So as we start winding down today's conversation, where are the leverage points? Where are the bits that people can enact to go figure out, I guess, to start to scope this stuff, right? How would you look at some of the first actions that aren't going to solve things, but at least start giving you information?
Well,
so go ahead, Rob.
If I'm a sales leader and I want to understand before I start, yelling from the mountain what I want done, right? I go on the ride along and I observe both the behavior and the process, right? And then I'm curious first before I'm judgmental, right? Well, when do you enter it in the CRM? What's your process for doing the thing that, we said we're going to do? And have that discussion. If they have gaps in their process or don't have justification, right? If you sniff out laziness or you sniff out some kind of conflict or interference, right? Would it be easier if when you got in the car, you did it? Oh, I'd love to do that, except blabbity blabbity blab, software sucks. It's too cumbersome. It doesn't work on my phone. Now we found a root cause, right? Take that puppy back to dev. Fix the damn app, right? So if you go in with an open mind, you go on the ride along, you listen more than you talk, right? And you ask about it. All of a sudden, that ask is gentle accountability, right? You don't have to walk in with a giant stick threatening everybody, but if it's what you talk about as a leader, it will become what's important for your people to do as a performer.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And as a sales leader, if I'm looking for a couple of things that I can do to get clarity on the shadow pipeline, the first thing that I do is I start having regular conversations, one-on-ones with my team to understand, like, who's in your pipeline, like who are you actually talking to? Like, I'm looking at your calendar with you and saying, oh, tell me about this person, because I need to understand, like, where are you spending your time? The other thing that I focus on is coaching. I don't even touch incentive structures yet, because incentive structures, oh my gosh. There is a story about a French consul in Vietnam who, you guys are looking at me, so funny. So there was a huge rat problem in the sewers of Vietnam, in the sewers of Saigon. He comes in, he says, we need to clean this problem up. So he passed a law that said for every rat tail or rat pelt you bring, we'll pay you this much money. He ended up creating a black market that actually bred rats and increased the rat problem in Vietnam.
Right.
So incentives are so hard to get right. And it's not something that you just jump in willy-nilly and try and mess around with. It's really, really not. So start with you, start with coaching your team, right? Regular one-on-one meetings, look at the pipeline, look at where people are falling out of the pipeline. Like you talked about, Jacob, is it a handoff problem? Is it a systemization problem? Is it that they were getting so far into the pipeline and then realizing that what you were selling wasn't what they actually thought it was, and so they opt out, right? Like, there are a million different problems, but bring that to your team. Have that conversation with your team, because they'll give you great insight as well. But start with the soft skills, and then if you don't see the needle move, then it's time to talk about the incentive structure, because that's a very long and costly process. People charge 6 figures as consultants to help teams get sales incentivization structures right.
Yep.
One thing I'd tag on the end of that, and again, I will admit this first, it's post-transaction funnel in the lifetime value side. But I would probably consider training all of your sales reps to think like account managers and customer success managers, and partner with that part of the team, because 83% of customers are willing to refer and 29% do, but that's because they're not asked.
Yeah.
So most businesses are losing out on that differential simply by not asking for it.
Right.
Yep.
There's a reason why McDonald's always asks, do you want fries with that?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
My pleasure.
My pleasure.
Anything else for anybody? Anything you want people to take home?
I think I would say, just again, I don't think that this is something that people can understand deeply enough. When incentives align, that's where you have a team. When incentives clash, you have opponents. When incentives don't intersect at all, right? When they go off tangentially, there's no relationship.
You just have chaos.
Yeah.
Yep.
So find a way to create an incentive system where incentives align for everyone on your team. That bonus system works great for the company that I work with. So there are lots of ways to do it, but just remember, make sure that those incentives don't clash.
Beautiful.
Unintended consequences, right? Negative externalities, right?
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, as usual, thanks so much for being here and for your time. And for those of you who are hanging out with us or watching the replays, we appreciate your thoughts, ideas, comments, criticism. It's all welcome.
Bring it.
Yeah.